On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 11 pipers piping.
Hello and welcome back to day 11 of the 12 days of Christmas. I'm Sherry and this is Tom.
Hey!
And we've been mentioning how these last handful of the 12 days of Christmas have been sung in a different order throughout the years.
That is true.
Well, this one is especially the case.
That is
you
also
see,
true.
the version that we've been following has day 11 as 11 pipers piping.
Right.
But did you know that only 2 of the 22 versions actually say that?
Really?
Yes. Besides the version we've been following, only the 1909 version has day 11 as pipers piping. By far the majority of the 22 versions have day 11 as ladies dancing. 10 of them.
10, wow.
Other interesting versions include 11 lads a-looping in 1892, 11 dancers a-dancing in 1882, 11 badgers baiting in 1867, and 11 ladies spinning in 1842, or maybe that's like spinning like...
A little choreography going on there?
Isn't spinning like some sort of sewing? That's probably more likely. In 1842 and 1846. Like spinning the weave, you know. Like
I'm going to go on.
Okay. Good idea.
Well, one comment I would like to make about one of these unique verses that you mentioned a moment ago, okay? You said that the 1892 version reads, lads a-looping, okay? Looping is spelled, that loop is L-O-U-P, L-O-U-P, and I thought I'd check out dictionary.com to see what this word means, okay? It has two definitions, and by the looks of it, I'm not sure that this verse, for one of those definitions, I'm not sure this verse shouldn't have been written for the year 2020 that we're in right now. Okay? I'll explain why in a second. Yeah. The two definitions, the one originally intended probably is the definition of to leap or to jump at, over or into something, okay? So lads a-leaping or lads a-jumping, that's probably the one that makes the most sense. However, the other definition that fits the year 2020, okay, really well is because the word loop, L-O-U-P, also means this, quote, a cloth mask, okay, often of silk or velvet, that covers only half the face.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm serious. So in 2020, how many lads, or everybody else for that matter, all right, have you seen wearing a cloth mask that covers only half the face?
Wow.
All right,
That is very interesting.
It is, it is.
Now, we also did a little search to find phrases that use the words pipe and piping.
Yep.
Found some good ones.
Okay.
Do you know that the phrase between the pipes is used in ice hockey, field hockey, and lacrosse?
You being the big lacrosse fan that you are, I'm sure you knew that one.
Absolutely. For playing the position of goalkeeper.
Yep, goalkeeper.
The word pipes refers to the pipe-like bars that make up the frame of the goal. Makes sense, right? Here's an old expression that was new to me. To pipe one's eye, which means, do you know?
It's to cry, to weep.
You only know because you're the one that looked it up. Yeah, to weep or to cry. I would think to pipes one eye would be like to poke one eyes out.
Go on, go on.
It means to weep or to cry. That makes sense, like a water pipe that keeps gushing out water. When you're really upset at something, you pipe out.
That's the idea.
Tears.
You probably also heard this one, a pipe dream. Okay, you know, a pipe dream is a dream or idea that's considered impossible to accomplish. Okay, and another one, how many times when you were young did mom or dad yell at you when you're playing with your siblings or your friends because you were just too loud and they said, "Hey, pipe down in there"?
Never.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So here's the question. Does the word pipe or any form of the word pipe appear anywhere in the Bible? You
know, it does, but again, it depends on the translation of the scriptures that you're using, okay? I mean, it does make a difference. But it does appear a bunch depending on those translations you might use. So an example, in the account of Solomon being anointed as king, the King James Version reads this way in 1 Kings 1, verses 39 and 40. It says this, and Zadok the priest took a horn of oil out of the tabernacle and anointed Solomon. And they blew the trumpet, and all the people said, God save King Solomon. And all the people came up after him, and the people piped with pipes and rejoiced with great joy, so that the earth rent with the sound of them.
All right. And then also in the King James Version, in 1 Corinthians, Paul uses the words pipe and piped when speaking about spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
Okay? 1 Corinthians 14:7 says, "And even things without life-giving sound, whether pipe or harp, except they give a distinction in the sounds, how shall it be known what is piped or harped?"
Yeah, okay. And one of my favorite uses of the word pipe actually appears 4 times in the book of Daniel in that famous account of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. All right? If you remember, King Nebuchadnezzar had built that huge golden statue. All right? And he made a decree that at the sound of the playing of the musical instruments, everyone had to bow down and worship that statue. And whoever did not fall down and worship that statue would immediately be thrown in the middle of a furnace of blazing fire. Okay? Now, those instruments are listed this chapter 4 times, okay? Including the word bagpipe.
Pipes.
Yeah,
Oh,
bagpipe, okay?
very good.
4 times, all right?
Okay.
Here's one of those times. Daniel chapter 3, verses 4 and 5 says this, "Then the herald loudly proclaimed, 'To you the command is given, you peoples, nations, and populations of all languages, that at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe,'" all right, "and all kinds of musical instruments, you are to fall down and worship the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up." Now, if you recall, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down and worship the image of gold that the king had made. All right, we pick up the account in Daniel chapter 3, verse 14. Sure, I'm going to have you read Daniel chapter 3 and start there at verse number 14, read through verse 23.
All right. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. He commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and were cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up.
All right. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down to any god except the one true God that we love and worship. So into the middle of the furnace of blazing fire they went. But note what happens next in verses 24 through 30.
Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, "Was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire?" They replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on the bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their heads singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command. and yielding up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon.
That is a great story. You know, it's an incredible story of three men who refused to give in to worship any false god. They wouldn't do it, regardless of the consequences. And they were even willing to die for the Lord. You know, their stand for the Lord reminds me of the Apostle Paul's words in Acts 21:13. Paul said this, "For I am ready not only to be bound, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus." You know, friends, these words of Paul should also be on the lips of every person who claims to be a follower of Jesus Christ. Christ died so that we might live forever with him. So we should be willing to die for him. Paul also said this in Acts 20:24. "I do not consider my life of any account as dear to myself, so that I may finish my course and the ministry which I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify solemnly of the gospel of God's grace." You know, we may not all be in vocational ministry like a preacher or a music minister or a missionary, but we all have a ministry to those we come in contact with to do that same thing, to testify solemnly of the gospel of God's grace.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Do you remember the fourth person who was in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?
Yeah.
You know, the one that was described as the appearance of the fourth is like the son of the gods.
Yeah, that's right.
Some people believe that the fourth person was an angel of God, but there are also others who see this as a Christophany, which is a physical appearance of Christ before his incarnation. The incarnation, of course, took place when Jesus came to earth as a baby, when he took on human form. The Apostle John recorded it this way in John 1:14, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us."
That's right.
Also, we know that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down to the statue of gold. But this account does remind me of the wise men's visit to the young child, Jesus, where they did
right.
bow down to him. And one of the three gifts they gave him was
Gold.
Matthew 2:11, "And after the wise men came into the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented to him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh." The word worshipped literally means prostrated themselves to, that is, to lay face down in a prone position to indicate worship. Whereas some of those who bowed down to worship the gold statue probably didn't want to and weren't really worshiping. Right. The wise men did so willingly, and they were really worshiping the Christ child.
That's right. That's right. Hence our connection. Yep. Day 11 of the 12 days of Christmas is 11 pipers piping. The bagpipes played in Daniel 3 signal that everyone was to bow down and worship the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, or they would be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused, were thrown into the furnace, and not only suffered no harm, but were accompanied by what some people believe was an angel, while others believe it was a Christophany, which is a physical appearance of Christ before his incarnation. And the incarnation took place when Jesus was born as a baby into this world. Plus, while Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego made the right decision and did not bow down and worship the statue of gold, the wise men also made the right decision and did bow down in worship to the Christ child and gave him a gift of gold.
Yet another unmistakable connection between the gifts that my true love gave to me in the 12 days of Christmas.
It was easy.
You were really proud of that one.
No, it's just simple. I mean, it was just came up.
All right, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Tomorrow is our last one.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking with us, guys.
Yep.
We'll talk about 12 drummers drumming tomorrow, but first, enjoy this presentation of the 12 Days of Christmas by the Gamble family.
See you tomorrow.
On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 11 pipers piping.
7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French